All right, so reporting bugs. So at some point, we will identify bugs, and it's everybody's responsibility to identify bugs, right? It's not only the responsibility of the QA, it's everybody's responsibility that whenever we see a defect, something's not working, that we report it to a level of granularity that they can be replicated. And obviously, we are humans. We will be introducing defects. It's inevitable. Up until we don't have AI that writes code for us, we will be introducing inadvertent defects. Now, not all defects are the same. They might differ in the impact, the severity, the frequency, and we need to be able to to prioritize them, right? To make sure that we address the ones that are most egregious, right? And always making sure that that we triage them, that we give them the right priority, and measure them against other work that needs to be done, right? That we need to do certain enhancements, or we need to have new features that need to be built by the end of this quarter. And so we need to be able to manage, right, the responsibility of dealing with all these different competing priorities. So bugs might be low or high impact, right? They might be something that is so devastating that it's not letting anybody do any work, or it might be something that is not as impactful, that it's egregious in that it looks really ugly, right? That something is misspelled completely, and that everybody can see it, but it's not stopping anybody from doing the work. So they're not the same, right? So we need to be able to triage them, to give them the proper level of attention, right? So that we can move forward. Some of them are sporadic, right? Those are the worst, where they work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and we can't realize we can't fully reproduce it. That I did it this time and it worked, and I do it another time and it doesn't work. Those are the worst. That they go on their the worst ones are the ones that all of a sudden just starts working on its own, right, without doing anything. It says, oh, now it works. What did you do? I didn't do anything. And those are the worst, right, because they could come back at any time, right? Those are you're most vulnerable. So typically you want to be using some kind of tool to manage these defects. Ideally, it would be the same tool that you're already using to manage the user stories. So in our case, we have been using Jira all along to manage user stories, but we're going to stick to Jira for managing bugs as well, right? But certainly there's many other tools that are equally valid, but we're going to be using Jira for reporting them, for assigning them, for triaging them, and viewing them, and then eventually closing them. For bugs, ideally we would provide the following information. Right, we would give it a meaningful name for the bug, meaningful in that in a single line it would describe the theme of the bug, and we know what it's all about. Then in the description we would have a much longer description of the actual bug, and then the exact steps to be able to reproduce the bugs. With snapshots or even maybe videos, the version of the browser that we're using, exactly where we were logged in as so-and-so, we navigated here and there, and give as much scope as possible, context, for somebody to be able to reproduce it. Especially the expected results, right? Don't just say, I went here, I did this, and this is what I saw. Right? So explain also, why is it bad? Is that wrong? Is it what is an example of what were you expecting? Oftentimes these bugs might be worked on by folks who didn't implement this at the first time, right? So as much information you can give them to place them in the context, the better. Okay. Again, we do have limited resources of folks who can work on these bugs, So it's important to be able to order them in some way so that we can identify which ones are going to be worked on first and which ones are going to be worked on later. And so we need to be able to order them or organize them depending on how egregious the problem is, how many folks is it affecting, right? And is it even how easy is it to fix it? Is it something that I can be fixed in a single line of code? I can go in and out. So depending on the frequency, depending on the severity, right, we might fall in any one of these quadrants, right? That this is high severity, high priority. This is something that is happening, is affecting everybody, right? And nobody can do anything, right? Everybody's just twiddling their thumbs, and they can't continue until this is fixed, right? So it's very high priority, very so number one. Or it could be something very low, where something's misspelled, right? It looks ugly. I can still do my work, right? Yes, I'll get to it. I know, but everybody can still keep doing their work. It looks ugly, but it's not really something that we should address right away. So examples of this might be high, major problem affecting most customers, service disruption, application is unusable. Certainly is order one, right? Or it's something, it's a major problem. Yes, we have a subset of folks. There's 4% of the folks who can't use the application at all, right? But hey, there's 96% of them can still work, right? So certainly it's less of a priority than when nobody can do any work, right? Also, so there's something that might be that looks ugly. It's it's misspelled maybe, but folks have a workaround. Maybe they have a manual way of doing it that they can't complete on the online, but they have some workaround, or something that's minimal, that's no major workflows, that we're going to leave for a nice to have. At some point, the QA engineer is going to have to communicate this and talk about the bugs with the rest of the team. Usually during sprint planning, right? They're going to need to identify what are we going to be working on next, right? Usually this is called triaging the bugs, right? They look at it, they look at the severity, they look at the priority, the frequency, and they order them by this, and then they identify, okay, these are the next 2 or 3 or 4 bugs that we're going to introduce in the next sprint, right? So that's also they might go to the original developer, and ask them, how long do you think this might take, and weigh that against other work that needs to be done, right? Because oftentimes, depending on how many bugs have been accumulating, there might be sprints where the project manager might decide that, this sprint we're only going to do bug fixing, right? And we're going to pay down those bugs, and we're going to do bug bashing, right? We're just going to clean off our backlog from bugs, right? Usually this is done towards the at the end of a quarter, right? Or at the end where there's a big release, and there's time. There might be some idle time with the team, between phases, right? And the project manager might decide to, hey, this is a good time to do some pay down either technical debt, or some removing some of these bugs. Usually the QA engineer also is keeping track of some statistics. How many new bugs are we introducing every sprint? How many bugs are we closing? Hopefully we're closing more than we're opening, right? And that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and perhaps we might depending on our velocity of being able to burn off so many points per sprint, we might decide to every sprint to allocate at least some amount of our effort to pay down our debt and pay down our bugs, right? That 25% of our focus will be on bug fixing, maybe another 25% or 30% will be on enhancements, and another 30 or 40% might be on brand new features, right? Most of us like to work on new features. We get bored on working on enhancements or bug fixing, but nevertheless, it's inevitable, right? That we need to work on those and pay them down. You might make some commitments to the team that over so many sprints, we're going to pay down this many percentage of bugs, that we're going to make an effort to decrease the number of bugs that we introduce down by 5%, every other sprint, right? And make an investment forward.